Okay, so we're gonna get right into it. The topic today is gonna be sponsorships, and I feel this is a perfect topic to talk about as esports in general is getting bigger, and we see more and more, as you would call them, the billion-dollar boys.
Yeah.
The man in the suits are getting involved, so I think it affects everyone who casual and competitive players to some degree. So I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts and we can have a little discussion on this topic. But before we delve in, there's a little discrepancy that we have to get sorted out, and that is a team versus a sponsorship. So since you're the CEO of Empire Arcadia, can you relay some of the information to help some of our viewers out on the difference between a team and a sponsor?
Okay, so to understand the difference between a team and a sponsor, I think we gotta kind of, or to at least identify where the discrepancy happened, we have to go a little bit further back to when it was brought into the scene, because
Hmm.
it's not the entire esports scenery that had this problem. It's really just a fighting game community, because they're so young into the competitive gaming scene. They're only, they've just got here in the last 14 years or so. But from where I came from, and I don't come from the actual FPS or the RTS scene. I come from the retro scene, but I've been in the RTS and the FPS scene. A sponsor is an organization in or outside of the gaming or the competitive scene that pretty much sponsors teams. They can give them product sponsors. They used to back then give out keyboards and sound cards and headsets and stuff like that, because you needed that to compete, and it's kind of expensive to get those.
Mm-hmm.
Or they'll finance you, send you out to tournaments, cover your hotel, your entry fee, your traveling, and that type of stuff. And the purpose of the sponsor doing that is for you as a player or team to then promote and market and advertise their product to the target demographic, which at that time was just the scene, the events. So it was really like word of mouth. Players would go and tell other players, well, this is the product I use, that thing, and to try to influence other people to pick up those products. So sales for that company would go up. ATI and NVIDIA is one of those known companies at the time. Over the last decade, that's slightly changed. It's newer companies, different products, and the sponsorship has expanded into not just PC, but also console. A team is the people who are promoting the sponsor itself or their products, or they're being financed by the sponsor. And that's usually why the sponsor is even doing that. The more popular the team, if the team is winning a lot, the sponsor would then say, okay, we're going to sponsor you guys because you guys get a lot of attention. Good or bad, it's really irrelevant. It's about getting their particular product out to the audience, exposing their product or their services. Um, Companies that know how to market can be in any situation, infamous or famous, and they know how to use that notoriety that they have to push their particular product. A great sponsoree, if you want to look at the fighting game community, was a guy called Fanatic. I don't know if and I'm not talking about Team Fanatic. I'm talking about like I don't really necessarily know Fanatic's actual real name. I always just call him Fanatic. But talking about the
Mr. Lauren Riley, or I know his
yeah,
first name is Lauren. For those who are unfamiliar, this is a very note. I would say he's very infamous. He did lots of money matches in the Marvel vs. Capcom 2 days and also
yeah,
Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Go
and
ahead.
he recently did that. He did a Red Bull thing earlier this year against one of our players, Desmond Pickney Executioner. He did a first to 10 in Marvel, very hype match and whatnot. But he's an excellent. He would be, for the fighting game community. He would be the ideal guy that that markets properly. A lot of our players don't understand what it is to be to market, promote, advertise, whatever. They believe that you simply put on a shirt or you wear a hat that has a particular sponsor's brand, or you compete in a tournament and you win. You give a shout out, and that's it. And no, that's not it. That's the big problem right there. A team's job is not necessarily to sponsor you. A team's job is to help develop you and the team as a whole. You're a player that represents a team is a part of a team, and they're supposed to help establish the brand of that team. Because esports is still, despite its 30 something years, um, despite the 30 something years in esports, fighting games is particularly is still young. So the infrastructure for finance, for like paying teams and stuff like that, it's still not here. It's not at that level. Evil Genius is one of the very few, if not the only, team that actually pays salaries to a player on their team. A lot of people have this conception that all these players are getting salaries, but we're not going to get into that. What we really want to focus on is that the team's job and the sponsor's job. And the team has an obligation to help support their players, whether player development, player management, player exposure goes in with the development because it's about how they get out there using the brand to expose the player at the same time, and vice versa. The player's job is to also promote the team, but the player does that through playing the video games. So they have their arrangement there. So it depends on what the player arranges with the management of the team, and then they go from there. So a lot of teams are coming up, and a lot of the times, a lot of the players join those teams to help build the brand, help get the brand established and notarized, build an influence behind it. And from there, that influence is what they then use to gain a sponsor, because they touch a certain demographic or a certain number that the sponsor feels that they can, you know, target their audience through that influence. So that's when the sponsors say, okay, listen, we want to sponsor your player, or we want to sponsor your team. And that's the relationship between the two. In the fighting game community today, they get mixed up. They have it whereas the sponsor is the team. And a sponsor, in my opinion, if we look at this like sports, if everything is supposed to be mimicking sports, a sponsor isn't really supposed to have a team. That's a conflict of interest. That's like Nike having a team in basketball or football or baseball. That would be a conflict of interest, because then only people on that Nike team could be sponsored by Nike. Nike couldn't go sponsor anyone else, but
Right.
then you're double dipping. So in the very same regards, you can't have that necessarily in esports. But as I stated earlier, esports is young, and because esports is young, there are a lot of things that are not regulated
But there
in terms
are,
of,
but aren't there examples? Like I know there's different companies that sponsor multiple teams. So do you think
yes.
it's slow?
That
Even
that's
though,
fine. That's fine. When it's like Red Bull can sponsor multiple players or potentially multiple teams. Same thing for Razer, same thing for Mad Cats,
mm,
and stuff like that. They could do that as long as they themselves are not a team. But some of them are. Some of them have teams. Razer started out doing sponsorship and a team. I don't know if they've changed that over the years. Mad Cats also did that, started out as a sponsor, and then they built their team Mad Cats. And I don't know if Red Bull is called Team Red Bull, because I know they have Leffen, they have Snake Eyes, they have Daigo, but Leffen's on, if correct me if I'm wrong, is on Team Solo Mid. So
correct.
I don't understand. I don't know what the situation is with that. Is he sponsored by Red Bull and he plays on Team Solomid, or is he on Team Red Bull and also Team Solomid, which is the confusing part. People in the fighting game community would definitely know this. You'll see in video game tournaments sometimes you'll see the multiple acronyms than the player names, and I had a huge issue with that in the past, because I used to tell people, listen, um, EMP is a team. Anything else is a sponsor or an affiliate or an associate to the team. But those other names aren't the team. Like Empire Arcadia is the team. Everything else. So one of our sponsors, our international sponsors at the time, was VXG. So we would put VXG/EMP and then the player's name. So VXG would be the sponsor, EMP would be the team, and then you have the player name. So that's how it always should have been. And we try to let everyone know that's what it should be with all other teams.